constitutional right to register and vote from where they're living to go to school. But still, eventually, even though most of the lower courts all lined up, eventually those legal fights made it up to the Supreme Court. And that's because of a particularly brutal fight over this subject at a school called Prairie View A&M in Waller County, Texas. Prairie View is sort of just northwest of Houston. It's between Houston and Austin as the crow flies. Prairie View A&M is a historically black college in a county, Waller County, Texas, that's not so black. Right now, Waller County, Texas, the overall population of the county is about 70% white, but the student body population at Prairie View A&M is 82% black. And in 1972, the year after the voting age changed from 21 to 18, lots and lots of students at Prairie View decided that they wanted to register and vote for the 1972 election. It was a super hot election, right? Nixon's running for re-election, running against a liberal anti-war candidate, George McGovern. Prairie View students, 18, 19, 20-year-olds, they've newly got the right to vote. They decide, like students all around the country, that they wanted to register and vote, and they decided that in large numbers. County officials in Waller County, Texas, though, decided they were not going to allow that. They did not want these Prairie View students voting, not in their county. Top elections official in the county dug in personally and decided he would make it his life's mission to block those students from voting in his county. He had his own ideas about what constituted a real Waller County resident for the purposes of voting. And students at that black school did not fit that idea that he had. And so he invented all sorts of tests that had the effect of not letting students at that local college register to vote in Waller County. That turned into a legal fight that wound its way through the courts. Ultimately, by 1979, that fight got to the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court ruled unequivocally in the students' favor. Just like all those lower courts had said, too. You can vote where you live, even if the reason you're living there is because you're going to college there. It is an unequivocal principle affirmed by the Supreme Court, thanks to those students at Prairie View A&M in Texas who wouldn't give up. But Waller County, Texas, it turns out, they wouldn't give up either. They wouldn't give up trying to shut down those students from voting. Not in their county. Are you kidding? Have you seen those students? Right? Even after that Supreme Court ruling in 1979, Waller County kept going after those students at that local college over and over and over again. In 1992, so more than a decade after the Supreme Court had ruled in the students' favor, in 1992, more than a dozen students from Prairie View A&M got indicted, got criminally charged for illegally voting. Originally, it was reported that 14 students were indicted. Ultimately, it was actually 19 students who got indicted. They were indicted for illegally voting. They were not illegally voting. They were voting from their residential address, which was the school, the college at which they resided. But the county just decided, you know what, that looks illegal to us. 19 students indicted. It's clearly an effort to keep students at that school from voting in the 1992 election. Ultimately, the Department of Justice sent a nasty letter to county officials. Amid that pressure from Washington, amid the uproar over the students being indicted, see that photo there, quoting Public Enemy, right? Remember, it was 1992. Ultimately, after the uproar, all those indictments did get dismissed, but Waller County wasn't done. In 2003, the county DA published a letter in the county newspaper declaring that no matter what the law said, no matter what the court said, he still considered it to be illegal for students at Prairie View to vote. He personally pledged in the local paper that he would indict any students who voted for criminal voter fraud. That was 2003. 2006, in the elections that year, hundreds of Prairie View students had their votes challenged. Again, on the basis of the fact that those students had committed the grievous voting crime of trying to vote while being students at a historically black college in a mostly white county. In 2008, the county decided that despite the thousands of students at the college, despite the thousands of registered voters among the students at the college, the county decided in its wisdom that they would set up a super convenient polling place for those students that was just about 30 miles from campus. This county in Texas, Waller County in Texas, I mean, Supreme Court or no, they have just absolutely dug in. They will do anything they can to make it as hard as possible for these black students to vote. They'll do anything they can. It wasn't until 2013, almost 40 years after that Supreme Court ruling in the students' favor, that the students ever got their first polling location that was actually on campus. Unless you think that means that the fight there is at least now over, no, it's not, because now it's 2018, and so now the county has a new plan. This is from Houston Station, local Houston station, KHOU.
Nearly 10,000 students attend Prairie View A&M University, so we're talking a lot of potential votes. Turns out, 2 addresses Prairie View A&M students were told to use on registration forms are in different precincts, meaning that on election day, a large number of students might not be able to vote on campus, or they'd possibly be turned away. Trey Duhan is county judge and tells me the Waller County Elections Office is working with Prairie View A&M to remedy address issues.
We understand that Waller County has had a history, but we have worked very hard to make sure the students have their right to vote. I want all the students at Prairie View to know there is nothing that's going to be done that's going to deprive them of their ability to vote if they've registered for this election.
If they've registered for this election. If they've registered, but are they registered? Are they properly registered? You saw the bit in that news footage about the 2 addresses that Prairie View students were told to use on their voter registration forms. That was at the direction of the county. What the county told students at Prairie View was that if they want to register to vote, they should register to vote using 2 school addresses that the county gave them. The county told them to use those addresses on their registration forms. Now the county says, actually no, maybe one of those addresses is wrong. Hope you didn't register using that one. The deadline to register to vote for next month's elections in Texas was this week. It was Tuesday. So yesterday, Wednesday, the day after the deadline, the campaign for the Democratic congressional candidate in that district, Matt Siegel, a Democrat who's running against Republican incumbent Congressman Michael McCall, he sent his field director to Waller County Courthouse to deliver a letter, to deliver this letter. It's a letter that's basically trying to protect the vote of the students at Prairie View. It's a letter from local Democrats, including the field director's candidate, Mr. Siegel, and it demands that since these students registered to vote using the address the county gave them and told them to put on their forms, the county shouldn't now block these kids from voting or try to send them somewhere else or field them out to some other precinct that they don't know where it is or make them fill out additional documentation like they've done something wrong. What these kids did was follow the county's directions for how to register. They didn't do anything wrong. If the county screwed it up, they shouldn't put it on these kids and make it harder for them to vote or block those kids from voting in order to deal with their own mistake. So that's the letter. Candidate Mike Siegel sends his field director down to the county seat, down to the county courthouse, to personally deliver this letter. Time is of the essence, right? The voter registration deadline was on Tuesday. He sends his field director down to the courthouse the day after the voter registration deadline. It's yesterday. Field director delivers the letter to a clerk at the courthouse. Field director then apparently snaps a picture of the fact that he has delivered the letter to the clerk at the courthouse to verify that the letter has been delivered. Then they arrested him. They asked him what party the candidate was whose campaign he worked for, and then they arrested him. And yes, it's as weird as it sounds. This is from the Houston Chronicle's write-up of what happened here. Quote, a field director for Democratic congressional candidate Mike Siegel was arrested at the Waller County Courthouse yesterday after he delivered a letter demanding the county update the status of students at a nearby college whose registrations were thrown into question the day before. The bailiff stopped the campaign field director as he was trying to exit the building and then apparently called the police. The field director then called the candidate he works for, who's an attorney. The candidate, Mike Siegel, said on the phone with his field director, he heard his field director being repeatedly asking why he was being held by police and whether he was free to go. At one point, the field director told a detaining officer that the lawyer he was on the phone with during this conversation was a candidate who was running for Congress. According to the candidate and his field director, the officer then asked, quote, what party is he from? Shortly after, the field director told him that his candidate was a Democrat. The young field director was arrested. He was told apparently that he was being arrested for a 48-hour investigative detention. There were initial reports that he was arrested for not producing identification to a law enforcement officer. We've seen other reports that said he was arrested for suspicious behavior in a courthouse. A sheriff's captain told that to Josh Marshall, the editor of Talking Points memo today. But in any case, they arrested him. The guy's out now. But here's like the sort of like the favorite little grace note for me in this whole story. After they arrested the congressional candidate's field director, reportedly after confirming with him that he worked for a Democratic campaign specifically, after they arrested him and they held him and then they finally let him out, even after they finally let him out, they kept his phone. He is the field director for the Democratic congressional candidate in that district, and the election is less than a month away. Now local law enforcement has confiscated his phone for the crime of handing over a letter trying to make sure that local students at the local black college can vote this time. Happy 2018. I know it feels like your TV set should be in black and white, so I'm telling this story, but no, this is us now. Joining us now is Mike Siegel, Democratic congressional candidate, and his field director, Jacob Aronowitz, who was arrested yesterday. Mr. Siegel, Mr. Aronowitz, thank you very much for being with us tonight. I appreciate you both making the time.
Thank you so much, Rachel. We're really glad for this opportunity.
Thank you, Rachel.
Jacob, I know I'm going to say this as both a thank you and a caveat. I have been advised that you have been awake for well over 24 hours and that you're in a little bit of physical distress at this point because of what you have been through. I want to thank you for making time given those circumstances and just ask you what you